Yep, mine wasn't either.
I finally came back to it.
That's why I
Are
had
you
to
here for
come
the
over
second
by.
meeting?
The two committee meetings.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can kind of email us or something. So I may just email it.
Okay.
Or I'll send it.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
First half of the percent. Oh, okay.
Because we don't.
Yeah, right now it's.
Okay.
It looks so nice. It looks so nice. Okay.
Data, information,
Thank you.
and we're gonna make some comments. I don't know if you want to lead on that one,
Yeah.
and then I can take it and kind of give a little introduction, but we got staff here to go through the. Here? Yeah, there. I'm gonna introduce that, because I had sent an email out. I think I copied you. Oh my gosh, this is really a piece of piece.
Yes.
But just
Agreed.
tipping them off through the
I've
discussion.
had the same trouble with it.
That's when you kind of get comments. Just, this was just a brainstorming session.
That's why I requested this. We're supposed to have this to do without this. That's why I had to call for this.
Well, and so the main thing staff is key that form, is to make sure you all.
Everybody be able to see the paper people, who the techie people are.
Hey, there's pizza downstairs, Gail.
Oh, no.
Just to FYI that we're.
Sit down, spend more time with it.
I'll be here a long time. Don't
Can you make it so you don't have to go?
now I'm just going on.
I mean, almost everything you guys asked for. I mean, well, I should say. But all code, building, police activity, you know, I mean, tax and all that stuff. I mean, all that stuff's on there, but you gotta access 5 systems to get to it.
Right, and I think
And I
that's,
know your direction. Okay, so I want to sign in, pull this property up. Then I'll give me each thing so I don't have to sign up and navigate through our system.
right, exactly. Hey, we'll start the conversation today and see where it goes.
Though it says we're pretty quick on Friday.
Surely.
It has been fairly quick on
Shaw.
Friday.
I guess when David gets here, we've still got seats.
We were there, side you were there, or over here by me.
Okay.
We got lots of places to play.
Now, the eventual cameras that we installed. Good evening.
I'm saying happy
Okay, happy New Year.
so I'm not contagious, but I'm living in contact. I want to say, hey, what a great job you're doing.
When I bought the car, the guy asked me this.
The snow?
Update. Yes. Now, I didn't get any calls, but it's good to know I can address them. So,
Glad that works.
I am through saying, how many need to do this for? So I can stay as long as I can, and I'm gonna get into the cars. The first one would be too much anything.
We scheduled 45 minutes for it, just over the data discussion. But the data discussion does not require action at that point. After, really after the first 2 minutes.
I'm gonna hang on, but if I jump up and run, that's what's happening.
Place her effective. You'll have 4. You'll have 4, so.
Okay, I'm gonna hang as long as I can, just in case I made it through the day. Just in case.
Fair enough. So, at what point are you gonna tell us that they are ready to go?
You mean we wait on them?
I don't think we have
Don't.
to wait on them.
Isn't that backwards?
Come on, Brian.
I'm sorry. We are?
On our cue.
All right.
I'll tell you what, we'll get everyone who's on the committee up here at the table, and we'll be ready to start our first of two meetings. Fantastic. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome during these standing committee meetings. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the agenda may do so when that item is up for discussion. You'll have 5 minutes to make your comments associated with that item. We ask that you please come forward to this table that's set up across from me when you want to make your comments. We do ask that everyone who speaks tonight please speak into or as close to a microphone as possible. And that'll be my segue to say it is amazing to see our new meeting room. I think it's going to take us a couple of meetings to get used to this new meeting room and how we, in the old room, although the microphones were sensitive enough for our recording of the meetings, we didn't necessarily need to have any amplification to be heard in the back of the room, which is quite a long ways away tonight. So we'll just work through whether or not everyone's able to hear. We'll make sure that we're recording everything adequately tonight. And so with that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Roll call. Walters?
Here.
Garcia?
Here.
Townsend?
Here.
McKiernan?
Here. Normally the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. However, there were some issues getting the minutes for this particular committee included in the packet, and so we will approve 2 sets of minutes at our next meeting. That then brings us to kind of a related announcement, and that is several of us on the committee had talked about how we would like to have the agenda packets for these committee meetings a little bit earlier in time to give us time to go through them, to read a little bit more thoroughly, maybe to get some questions answered before the meeting, so that when we do come to the meeting, we're more informed and we can make a better decision and a better vote on any items that come forward for a vote. So I've been talking with our staff, and we're going to try an experiment starting next month. Normally, we have agenda review on the Wednesday prior to a Monday meeting. The agenda packets are then distributed on the Thursday prior to a Monday meeting. We're going to try to move everything up by a week so that we have our agenda review 2 Wednesdays before the meeting, and so that packets get distributed 2 Thursdays before the meeting. Now, the first month or two, we're going to have to figure out how this is going to work, and we have to be especially sensitive to economic development items that are timely and need to be brought forward to the meeting, even if they don't make the initial early deadline for bringing materials forward. So starting next month, you should expect to find your agenda packet 2 Thursdays prior to the meeting, which will give you a full week for review before the meeting. And as we go through, we'll continue to work out any kinks in the processing to make sure that we meet the demands of plenty of time for staff, but also plenty of time for commissioners to review. So that's just an announcement. And so that takes us to our committee agenda. And item number 1 on our committee agenda tonight is land bank applications and a conveyance report. Mr. Slaughter.
Good evening. First, just want to note a quick typo on your packet. It did say 12 applications. That is 9 that we'll be reviewing tonight for side lot applications. Those addresses are 1127 Haskell Avenue, 3036 North 31st Street, 1886 North 38th Street, 18 South Minnie, 3724 North 35th Street, 2710 Walker Avenue, 61 South 26th Street, 63 South 26th Street, 854 Orville Avenue.
Move for approval?
Second.
There is a motion and a second to approve all of these land bank properties. Any further discussion?
Just a couple of questions for clarity.
jumping the gun
Go
here,
ahead.
but if you currently are showing any sort of code violation as well, we will ask that the applicant get that remedied before we move the application forward.
Okay, so how current can their last code violation be?
Well, before I submit these to, through the RFA process, I do review the Excella, Maui, I believe either way is correct, system to check for any current code violations, and I will check either by the person's name or that current mailing address that they have.
Okay, so alls I would add, and we don't have to do this tonight, I would like to see us look at maybe a policy with this process that says that you can't have had a code violation in the last 12 months. I'm a little flexible on that. I go down to 6 months, but, I mean, it's not that hard. Our codes aren't that strict, so it would be great. I know that, and this is not your fault, because when you checked, they did not have a code violation. Now, we have a side lot that came through this process in my district, and it's full of junk. And it has numerous code violations sitting on a side lot that was given to them through this process.
So this individual or this property received this property through the land bank?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's not your fault, because you followed
Well,
process, which was, is there a current code violation? And when that happened, there wasn't a violation. I think they needed the lot to put their junk on. And we can't allow that to happen. So, if there's a way, it would just, not saying it would have prevented this particular situation, but if there's a way to add to our policy that we have to look back 6 months or 12 months, whatever you all think is reasonable, but I think not having a current code violation is a pretty minimal standard. So,
And for
Commissioner
that
Townsend.
question, I'm just a little unclear. Do they currently have the violation, and do we know when they received the property? Because according to their deed, they have, if it's within the first year, we have the right to retain the property.
it's all been within a year, and I didn't know that. You have the option to bring the property back?
We will ask them to remedy the situation based on our large inventory number. I don't know if the board would want to consider taking that back into the inventory. So I feel the best way to handle this would be to give them the opportunity to remedy this, let them know that this is not encouraged, and if they don't comply with that, then yes, then we can use that clause in their deed.
I'll get you that address.
I appreciate that.
But I think that goes to a bigger point. And first of all, is it possible that we could look 6 or 12 months retroactively and look for violations on that property? And I think this comes down to, you know, how much time and person power can we invest, can we afford to invest up front or after the fact to enforce the policies that we actually have in terms of these code violations?
Well, and I believe if it's stated in the policy, we need to be enforcing that.
Okay.
And, you know, I apologize, it's probably an oversight on my behalf, but with that information, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, we are managing a lot of property. You know, so and you're one person in your department? Isn't it just?
The last I checked.
There's nobody else working with these, so that's understandable. That's why I'm saying if we can get ahead of the game and look at what they've done 6 months prior or a year prior, that might be better than having to react once it's already done.
Exactly. And after the fact, do you get a tickler notice from codes if a property that you've transferred out of the land bank then generates a violation within those first 12 months?
I don't want to speak for codes, but I would say it'd be pretty hard for them to know that that had previously been owned by the land bank. And I'm sure they have a lot on their plate too, and the last thing they want to be checking back is past ownership. I think it's something worth exploring. You know, I don't know if we have any discussions coming up about data or anything, but you know, that may be something to put on a checklist of possible ways to set up that red flag, to notify myself, the codes, or whoever else would need to know, the commissioner of that district. Because if we wanted to just get rid of this property, I think we would be giving it away. And we have asked them to, you know, go through a certain set of criteria to be eligible and to hold the property for a short period of time. And I think that's the least that the applicants can do, is to turn around and do what we ask them to do.
Right, and it doesn't mean that they can't, you know, if somebody has a code violation currently, whatever we decide decide is a reasonable amount of time. They just have to remain code-free, code violation-free for 6 months or a year. Doesn't mean they can't come back and apply. And it's not like people are clamoring for these side lots. So I doubt there's gonna be anybody, taking it over, but, in the meantime. But it does, I think, send a message early on that they're not gonna be allowed to treat, well, even if their own property like that, because it affects surrounding property owners.
Commissioner Townsend?
The concern I had, though, I guess, the concern I would have is whether or not we are going to prohibit people from getting lots through the land bank merely if they had a code violation. I guess the issue for me would be, has it been remedied? The fact that they've had it for 6 months or 12 months, certainly if it's open, then that's already a no-no under our current provisions. But what if they had a code violation that was remedied, there's been no further problem? Is that, significant enough or reasonable reason enough to preclude them from getting, the side lot, if they are compliant with all the requirements? Because we don't know what somebody's gonna do after they get it, but that's the only thing that, I would want us to consider and be aware of. We don't know. And if they've been compliant, then what is the reason?
And I believe that there's gonna be different type of scenarios that present different type of responses, and one that comes to mind real quickly is graffiti. You may have been cited for your house for graffiti even though you didn't put it there, and if you may be in some, certain circumstances where you can't immediately get out there and remedy that, that may not be a reason to keep you from getting that side lot to put a garden or to expand your yard for your kids. So I think it'd be an interesting conversation to have and to come up with some, solutions for that.
Chairman, we have a big agenda, so I didn't mean to go on, and I do agree with Commissioner Townsend. So I guess staff is completely capable of coming up with the suggestion. This is my concern. It's not the one-time violator that fixed the violation. I look at code violators sometimes like I do offenders. They tend to repeat their behavior over and over and over again. So my concern is that just because the code violator has resolved their issue, if they've had 10 code violations in 6 months, even if they've resolved them, I have concerns about the repeat offenses.
Oh, okay.
So I should have been more clear. You're exactly right. We definitely don't want to penalize a one-time person, especially if it's on a graffiti issue. So I don't want to belabor this issue. I'm just saying, I'm sure staff, you know what you do and you know what you run up against. So if you could maybe vet that a little bit better. What I'm just trying to prevent from happening is from people being code-free for a couple of days so they can get a side lot and then cause a lot of problems for the neighborhood. That's all.
No, I appreciate it. Generally, with everything I have to do, that's not at the top of my list once I transfer a property, is to check that on a daily or weekly basis, and nor should it probably be, but no, I appreciate that you brought that up.
And now you have a conveyance report? Oh, I'm sorry.
We have not voted.
I'm sorry, there was a motion and a second, and there's been discussion. Now, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 And that brings us to the 2013 Wyandotte County Land Bank Conveyance Report. Each year I provide this report to you. It's also published in the Echo. Provides the past year's activity of property that we conveyed out of the land bank. Just to pay attention to the last page, we did convey a total of 105 properties. The amount of revenue generated to the unified government from the land bank sales was $50,546.32. And also 25 of those 105 properties were conveyed to CDC's Habitat for their ongoing projects.
And they were charged nothing.
Correct.
Right.
And this $50,000 is simply the amount of the transfer, not the amount of the taxes then that are generated from those properties?
That's the amount of money generated through the sale.
Through the sales, okay.
Sales, plural.
If anyone has any other comments or questions for Mr. Slaughter, we can entertain those now.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, that completes actually our committee agenda. Now we turn to our public agenda. There's one item on our public agenda tonight, and that is an appearance by Pamela Garcia. If Ms. Garcia is here, I would invite her to come on up to the podium. All right, it appears that Ms. Garcia is not here, so we will double check and follow up with her, offer her an opportunity to come back to our next meeting and lead her discussion. That closes our public agenda, and it brings us to our outcomes discussion. So one of the things, and this last discussion about the land bank has started to hint at it, one of the things that we've been talking quite a bit about, at least some of us have been lately, is that we generate a lot of data, or we could generate a lot of data about our function as the unified government, about businesses, about homes, about properties, about code violations and licenses and rentals and deeds, and the ability to quickly and easily gather, store, access in some meaningful way those data would really be of help to us. So as we've talked about for a couple of meetings now, we're going to continue our discussion of data tonight. And tonight our staff are going to begin to give us an idea about data that they already gather that is actually quite large in volume, but maybe stored in multiple locations, and start to educate us as to some of the challenges they face to gather, store, and then report on all the data that we're currently gathering, and use that as a springboard for a discussion into how can we make the system better and more usable in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tonight we have several staff members present that are going to walk through a demonstration of the systems we have, so you all can see, and probably just by noting the fact when I say several staff members here, that probably shows you how many different masters we have of different systems that are out there. But coming to the microphone now is Chris Cooley from our base mapping area. Also joining, though, I think Chris Slaughter might be coming back in from stuff he has. We have Peggy Englehart and Greg Talkin from the Neighborhood Resource Center. Captain Quinn's here, Police Department. We talked about different police records, and as well as George Brakovich has worked on this, and Mike Grimm. So we're going to turn it over to Chris, and you can kind of walk through what you're going to present, Chris. But our emphasis here, as the Commissioner said, is to really show you what we're tracking now and how people can get into that, and then kind of get feedback from that standpoint, and then go to the point of where we can look at other data we do have, but it's not available to the public. Chris?
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. Talk about, what I want to start is talk about a little bit about applications, data, and reports, and things like that, but also talk about what we're kind of talking about tonight is public access. What's available to the public through applications, through the web, and so forth. Certainly, any of our information is open records, and it's available to them at any time. Sometimes they have to do a request, and a report would be generated, and so forth. But what we're showing you tonight is really just kind of the tip of the iceberg. There are, for any of these systems that we show you, these applications that's accessible to the public, there's a business system or multiple business systems that have much richer and deeper sets of data that feed what's going on there. What you're seeing is summary or the most commonly asked for kind of information. Talk a little bit about what are we talking about here? Data reports and applications. This is something that kind of come up in discussion as we were preparing for this. And just to clarify some terminology and get us kind of all on the same page. Data is simply raw tabular lists. It's unsynthesized. It has very little meaning. It's just, this is tax data, tax information for several years. It doesn't have a lot of meaning until we synthesize it. This isn't a tax bill. This is a list of tax bill information and the status of that those payments and so forth. A report would then be synthesized from that, and here's one that Mike Grimm's department prepared on population information. This is available on our website today, but it's comparing population from 1990 to 2000 and those changes in population. So this is synthesized. It has context. It has meaning. It allows us to answer a question. What is going on in this neighborhood as far as population growth, a trend over 10 years or something like that. It's far better than just the raw data that's out there. And then applications. Applications allow us to on-demand kind of generate those reports. Search, query, and exploration is what you're doing with an app. What you're seeing here are kind of some screenshots of the applications we're going to talk about tonight. And these will be probably the primary applications for people to get to a lot of our primary data within government, within the unified government, and what we've been going on with them. The applications we have today, a majority of them tend to be focused on single record generation. You're inquiring about a single address or a single parcel or a single incident, a single code violation or something like that. It isn't a more telling dashboard or report that gives you trends and statistics and charts and things like that. They tend to be individual inquiries. So just kind of setting the groundwork there. Talk about some of the specific applications. I'll go into the ones that I'm most familiar with and the ones that I work with. Certainly I'll talk about dot maps, which my office maintains. See if I can get the links to work here. If not, I've got other ways of dealing with this. We've developed this application several years ago. It's a basic interactive web mapping viewer. Takes a little bit to get there. It allows people to do what I call pan, zoom, and identify, PZI, is the basic kind of thing. It's what we also refer to as being a mapzilla. There's dozens of layers. It's not targeted at any one particular use. So it tends to provide a lot of information. But the basic stuff it does is allows people to search by parcel number or an address. They can click and identify on a property and get basic information about it, a parcel number and an address, basic subdivision information, so they can get a little bit deeper into it. They can certainly turn on aerial photography so they can see some context behind it. I think this is just north of Big 11 Lake. Oh, I have to do an update down here. Okay, so that's one application we have. Another one would be our Lands Web application. It goes by a few other synonyms like real estate search or parcel search, or depending upon what department you're linking to it from. But the basic application is Lands Web. Show you the basics of it. Users can come to it. They can do a real estate search. If they've obtained the parcel number and address from the mapping site, they can come over here and they can enter that in. Not many people use parcel numbers, but if they have it off of a tax bill or something like that, they can see this. If we have a current photo, it'll appear here. Parcel number, obviously, the property address. If I was a logged in user into this system, citizens have the ability to create a user account. If they're a logged in user, then they will see owner name information here. This was a decision made several years ago when we were building these types of sites that we wouldn't freely and anonymously allow access to owner information. So that's the way we're presenting things now. This goes on and it shows obviously appraised value for many years and tax roll information. Going back to the search page, people can search by parcel number. They can sort things by subdivision, see what's going on within an individual subdivision. The state ID is by the appraiser's office, and then search by an address. If you're ever talking to anybody about this stuff and they're having problems doing an address search, computers are very literal. So if I type in 123 North Main Street and it's just 123 Main Street and there's no north, they're going to get no results. So I often tell people less is more. You're going to get a better search result if you type in less. So just a 123 Main rather than the north of the street and everything that goes along with that. The next application I'd show is from the appraiser's office. I don't support this directly, but certainly some other property-related information. They have their parcel search, which has a little bit more detailed information. Person can come in here. I'm going to use a parcel number. They could also use an address or the state ID that the appraiser's office uses. The results they get back little bit different. Click on this link, I'm going to see more detail. This is the basic information, obviously address information repeated from the other site. Some basic property characteristics, property values, current ones, as well as any validated sales they will present there, the sale values there. They also have their detailed inventory data sheets available here. This is a PDF that will come up. See if I can get it to come up. This is a far more detailed look at the property as far as square footages, type of construction, condition, and those kinds of things. This is what they actually are close to what they're actually using in their office to value a property. Comparable sales, so it shows us the sales that were used in the most recent value generation. Shows the subject property in each of the individual comps, so validated sales that were used for their market analysis. And then the most current property image of the property is available as well. So those are the applications that I'm most familiar with. I'm going to ask Peggy Engelhardt to come up here and talk a little about the NRC's elink program and its links to the NRC stuff.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This link gets us to the Maui data. You might have heard that. It's also referred to as Excella. That happens to be the company that designed and continues to enhance it. But this is their public-facing page. The name elink is something that we gave it just so we had something to call it. But what it does is it lets you access, you as a citizen access the data. Now, I know you guys are familiar with the NRC, but just to say again, the kind of data we have in it is all the building permits, the code enforcement, licenses, which are both business licenses and rental licensing, plus their inspections. And then planning, we have certain agenda items that they have, vacations, change of zone, and so on. And so just to show you how this works, you can access the individual divisions up here. You can come down here. You always have more than one way to get at the data. I'm going to show you code enforcement. Again, you're going to have a couple different ways to search it. And I'm going to go by case type and pull up graffiti items for the last year. So these are cases that were initiated since last January. These are other items. As you look here, you can see you can search by street number and case number, but people don't always know that case number because they just call in and report it. But just to give you an idea of kind of the data that's in here, I'm going to go by case type. And it should pull back all of those records for the year. So what it does is it's just going to give you about 10. And this is a little clunky. That's why we haven't really pushed it out real with a lot of gusto. But I'll show you that it uses Bing Maps here. And so it'll show you that those are the first 10 graffiti cases in the last year. And so if you hover on them, it will pop up here and tell you what the address is, and there's a case number, so a citizen could write that down and call in about it if they wanted to, but most likely they're going to call you about the address. And then if you click this more info link, you're going to peek into the case. So you see again the case, what type it is, here's its location. If you go into more details, you'll see that we have some parcel information. This is a linkage that we have to our to the other databases that Chris talked about, where we pull in real estate information, legal descriptions. We don't show it, well, we do, land value, but there's a couple other things that we carry into the case for the staff purposes of like creating notices and property information sheets for court and and those kind of documents that they need on a daily basis. So we carry over a lot more information than what we put to the public facing. And under additional information, depending upon what the case is, you'll see a lot more information there that's particular to that function. Rental licensing, you're going to see how many units it has, who the owner is, the business owner or manager. For building permits, you're going to see went brain dead. But things that are particular to building permits are going to be showing there. If fees are associated, you would see them here. This one doesn't have any. A lot of code cases don't have fees associated with them, but here's the inspections associated with this. So it would tell you the type of inspection it is, what the status was, so they found violations. This is the date of it, and these are the initials of the inspectors. Click that little doohickey there, and you're going to get the comments that were recorded on the case. So this tells you it was an environmental problem, remove graffiti, tells you where it is. This is the same thing that goes out on the notice of violation letter to the people, to the citizen, to the violator, so they can see it right here. This is case status. Click. And so this is also what we call workflow. So these are all the steps that have to be done to resolve the case from initiation to completion. And so the check mark says done, done, done. And each of these things, if there's a little bit more about it or their status, would be showing. And if there are any attachments to the case, they will display for the public, but the public can't open them. That was one of the decisions we have. But you can see there is a photo associated with the case, and here's a PDF of the violation letter that was actually sent to the citizen, telling them what the problem was and what to expect in terms of the following procedures. If there's any related permits, you would see those. If you had a rental license case, you'd most likely see a related permit, because any inspections that were required for that rental license would then show there, and so then you could click to that and easily move to it. So for any of the cases that we have in the Maui system, be it any of these divisions, then you could find them and see them online. And this is found on the home page. If you go Waiko KCK, Departments, NRC, then you'll see the elink. Or we could give you this little URL too. So that's it, unless there's any questions.
Next up, wanted to invite Rance Quinn with the Kansas Police Department to talk about the SpotCrime application a little bit.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, I'm here to talk about how our police department currently shares crime data, at least a generic form of crime data, with our citizens of our community. And the way we do that is that we use a free service called SpotCrime. If you were to go to any of your favorite search engines and type in SpotCrime, all one word, SpotCrime, it would give you this link, and you could click on this link here. Maybe. Mr. Cooley's telling me it worked earlier. There it goes. Okay, so once you get to the home page, which is this here, you can go browse by state, and you would find Kansas, obviously. Kansas, and then you would find our city, Kansas City. Crime map there. And then you can see the crimes that we share with them. It's shown in 100 blocks, so you can't see a specific address where a crime would have occurred. However, you can see if it occurred on your block. And what it shows here is the either 300 crimes or 2 months worth of data. Typically, we hit the 300 crimes first, so it uploads daily. So if it was to upload tomorrow, it would kick off the crimes, the oldest crimes, and run back up to 300. And when you see these crimes here, you can see that there are several crimes that they show, which is arrest, arson, assault, burglary, robbery, shooting, theft, vandalism, and others. These are kind of generic in terms, and they may not necessarily match what we call a particular crime in our city, but this is because this is a national website. These are pretty generic, so the crimes are kind of put into these generic categories. So if I wanted to go up here and look at a particular crime, I could go up here and click on a particular crime, like so, and it shows, that one's not a good one. This one occurred in the 200 block of South 10th Street, and it's a vandalism, and the report date was 12/17/2013. If I wanted to see some more information about it, I could click there, and it'll tell me a little bit more about where the location is, and it pulls up a street view of the address location. Not the particular address, but within the street itself. Okay, so if I went off of there and I wanted to click on another one, I would just go to a different location. I can zoom in, that sort of thing, so I can see the crimes for the different areas of the city. And another function that this has is that if I was a particular citizen and I wanted to get an alert every time a crime occurred within my neighborhood, I could go in here and I could type in get alert, and I could set up a radius around my house, like 1/8 of a mile, half a mile, that sort of thing. And then whenever the report came in and it's entered into our system and it appears on this website, you'll be sent an email. And so it'll say, hey, this crime's occurred at this particular 100 block. And so you'll be able to see what's occurred in your neighborhood. It has some other tools on here, like it's got some analytics. You can select the different crimes that you want to see, or you can view them all. Right now we're viewing them all. And that's pretty basic. The analytics portion, we can try that. Has an analytics portion of this, and it kind of shows our crime trend. But again, we only do 300 crimes on here, so it looks like the oldest we go back is November of 2013 there. And it compares, and it kind of shows how it shows November and December here on our crime trend. And if you scroll down here, it can kind of show you we have had 2 shootings reported on here. Robberies 0, burglaries 3, assaults 14, theft 17, vandalism 10, and the big blue portion here is arrest. Obviously, we've had more arrests than we have those particular crimes, so that's why it just appears big in this slice of pie, if you will. So just something simple that a person within our community can see our crime stats. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Actually, the question I have, it probably goes to Chris. And so far, we've seen like 4 different types of data. We've seen parcel data, we've seen appraisal data, we've seen code data, and now we've seen crime data. And all of these data are available to the public currently through our website. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'll stop there for the moment, but I have lots of follow-up questions.
That kind of concludes what we had to put together. We can certainly go on to a discussion about anything that you guys may have regarding this. These are the highlights of what we, in the context of maybe land bank or properties, what people are commonly asking questions about of, what's the property? What have the taxes been on it? What's its value? What is the code violations with the building permits, those kinds of things, and what's a crime in the area? Those are common questions we hear asked in regards to this context. But you can see that this data has uses in so many other ways, not just in context of maybe land bank or vacant properties that we've had this ongoing discussion about. And there's opportunity for, for doing things differently, for change. But we've got a lot there now, but there's room for improvement, I think. So.
Well, certainly it seems to me that we want to collect data to do several things. We want to help make decisions, to help create policy, to help solve problems. And so I guess the first question that I would ask, and this is more rhetorical than I expect an answer right now, but are we collecting the types of data that would help us make decisions, create policy, and solve problems in our city? I have, earlier today, unfortunately the members of the committee already got this from me, I have about 3 pages of, do we have data questions? Do we know how to access it? I think would be the next question. I would wonder how many citizens would know how to go find these data on our website. And so should one of the things that we do going forward be to try our best to educate people that it's there and how they can rather easily get to some of it. I think it might be good for all the commissioners to have a similar in-service on how to get to some of these data, so that if they want to just look something up on their own, they can. But I have a follow-up question then. It seems like all of these data that we've seen here pretty much are good at showing us a single record or a range of single records. But what about tabular reports? What if I want to collapse it across time frames or geography? Or, for example, well, I'll just ask that. How easy is it to get tabular reports?
That's something where it becomes an open records request that falls on staff. You know, it usually takes a little bit of a work from a skilled analyst. And Peggy's office has many reports that are pre-canned that they can run upon a request, you know, asking for the kind of thing that you're asking for. But it has to be a specific kind of thing. It isn't necessarily user-driven or interactive, you know, on-demand kind of thing. So as you just to reiterate your observation, yes, this is very much to find an individual record. You do get a range of things, but so you can drill down and see that individual record and get that story on that one property, that one site, that one incident. Getting those summaries and statistics and those kinds of things. Not so good at that with these applications right now.
Well, I think that would be one thing that I would just suggest that we all, both staff and elected alike, start to think about. What sorts of tabular reports, what sorts of summary reports would help us make decisions and create policy and solve problems? And then we can ask the question, how easy or how hard are those reports to create or to generate within our various systems? How confident are we that our data is accurate?
How confident are we?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It depends on the data set. I mean, there's certainly some data sets that we're less confident in, but I think that, you know, like Peggy's very confident in the data that they're doing. They have people generating that data on a daily basis that's going in there. Certainly the things we're dealing with taxation and tax billing, that's very accurate, and, you know, we're getting the right thing there. And people generally holler when we get it wrong, so we'll correct that for them. You know, so there's, you know, fairly good confidence, I think, in what we've got there.
Excellent, because the next general observation I would have that is, if I'm going to try to make decisions and create policy and solve problems based on data, I want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible so I make the right decision.
I mean, there are certainly some shortcomings to some data sets, and you know, we won't go into the details right now, but you know, anytime you would ask a question, I think that staff would warn you that, okay, we can give you an answer to that, but here's the limitations of the data we have to answer that question. And I think that would be an important caveat we would want to give you.
How well, it seems like some of our data lives in different places. So there's the appraisal system, and there's the code system, and there's the crime system, and there's other systems. How well do those systems talk to each other?
Not very well. I mean, they can be made to, but it takes expertise to make them talk or to make them integrate. You know, you're talking about a skilled analyst or a skilled developer or somebody like that that knows and understands the data, knows and understands databases, and probably a little bit of coding and computer programming. You know, we have some of those people on staff that do some of that today. Peggy was mentioning that they were, you know, pulling over property information from the tax and appraisal systems into the code enforcement data that they're using in their business system. You know, some of those linkages are happening, but it isn't always happening. And some of that's just because of the way we operate. You know, we're set up and we have departments, and we focus on our business, and that's what we collect our data for, is to do our job. It has value to others, and we're certainly willing to share it. But making those linkages can be a challenge sometimes.
So if I were to ask today, let's say, for a report that shows me all the properties that have had code violations in the last year, and I wanted to know what are the appraised values of all those properties. So that report could be generated because you're bringing those data over into your database. If I want to go to my list, I've got a couple of questions here. But so I think one of the other things generically that we should think about is how we allow or make all of our data systems talk to one another so that we can cross-reference the data and create richer reports that may give us more background for making decisions and for creating policy. I had one other question.
Commissioner,
Yes.
to that thought, one of the things that we just finished a year with Code for America, and one of the big pushes behind Code for America is opening data. Certainly our data is open. By law it is. It's created with public funds, therefore it's public data. But opening it up and providing access to it is making it easier to access is one of the key points of what Code for America pushed for. And that, making the data that they're putting out there in a tabular form that may be machine readable so that other users and other departments can bring it together on their own, maybe not have to ask that expert analyst over in the police department to generate it, maybe not have to go to the appraiser's office to generate it, but an analyst in one department could pull that data together and generate some, as you say, be able to generate some statistics or reports that could drive decisions. We've already collected the data for our business needs. Our primary business need, whatever it is, we've collected the data for that. Let's use it for some other things and generate more value out of it. So that's certainly a possibility, and it requires us to kind of shift our thinking, change the way that we think about open data. It's the Obama administration. He changed the thought about federal data. It's open by default. Well, you think, well, government data is always open by default, but what they mean by that is that it's no longer a request and a response. It's out there for somebody else to consume and use. So that's a little bit of background behind that and thoughts behind that.
Well, I certainly have monopolized this conversation, but what I would ask is a couple of things before, and certainly I'll open it up to any other questions or comments, but I'll ask a couple of things. First, for the members of this committee, and actually for all of the commissioners, I'll ask that we start thinking about what sorts of data would help us solve problems, make decisions, and create policy. And if you want to send those to me, I'll take responsibility for collating those lists and make sure that we pass them on. And if I could ask Chris, could you facilitate among staff just a discussion about what barriers or what challenges we run into in collecting and reporting on those data currently, and kind of brainstorming how we can get better at it in the future. So just really a brainstorming discussion on how we collect and use data, both for public consumption and then for special reporting, like we might ask for on a particular case. And if we can then just bring updates on those two discussions to our next meeting, we'll continue this discussion then. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions or comments that they'd like to bring forward on data?
On this particular data? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was enlightening for me to know this is just there, first of all, and available, and a lot of our constituents viewing this may have that same, oh wow, I didn't know this was available, in a fashion that would allow me to access it directly, other than calling someone here at City Hall and have them do it. That's number one. I guess the question for me though, or how this could be accessed or put together to be more effective would be predicated on what question I'm trying to answer. And I don't know the question to that. I think at this level for me it's just good to know it's there and available. We recently did the virtual tours, and a lot of us did stats on who is in our district ethnicity, education, income, so I'm sure these are some of the databases that information was pulled from. So we had a task, and there it was, so, thank you.
Well, and I think one of the things we also want to be mindful of is the fact that this is, having access to data and having rich data sets comes at a price. We have to buy hardware, servers, other connections to be able to both store and then serve or give out that data. And it comes at a cost of personnel as well. We have to have people who will input the data, manage the data, report the data, program the data. So although it can be enormously useful, I think we need to continue to think about the cost that it comes with as well. Any other comments or questions? Thank you so much to everybody who presented for us tonight. We really appreciate it. It was eye-opening. With that, that is the last item on our neighborhood and community development agenda. That meeting is adjourned. We'll take just a couple of minutes to transition into economic development and finance.